Depending how you look at it, New York City can be the best place in the world or the absolute worst. And I'm gonna share why in this video. It is no surprise that New York City is probably one of the most expensive places in the entire world. And everybody knows that going into New York City. But sometimes you don't actually internalize how expensive it is until you're here every single day. And you have to do things like pay your rent and eat. And I have to say, as somebody who moved to New York City years ago, broke, and as somebody who is not broke now and has more money, sometimes it doesn't even feel like it gets easy because things just get more and more expensive and you feel like you just never have enough money to live comfortably in New York City. It's kind of crazy. And then when you take a look at the apartments, when you look at what you're paying and see the apartment that you're getting for the price that you're paying, it is absolutely crazy. Sometimes I sit there and think to myself, what am I doing? Like, is it all really worth it? And at the end of the day, I always think that it is all really worth it. But sometimes I really do question that because I'm like, this is absolutely crazy. And don't even think about telling the people in your life outside of New York City what you're paying for your rent there, because they're going to be absolutely astonished no matter what. And they're going to try to convince you that it's not worth it. Trust me, I deal with it all the time. New York City is a beautiful place, but if you really look hard enough, you'll realize that there's actually a ton of trash everywhere. So other cities around the world have alleyways where they put garbage in dumpsters. Not New York City. New York City decides to throw the garbage on the streets. Now, I do have to say, New York City is a very packed city, so it's a little bit hard to figure out a better scenario for the garbage situation here, but it is bad. It is really bad. On trash day in certain neighborhoods, you'll just see piles and piles of garbage everywhere. And not only will you see the garbage and it's not pleasant to look at, but also in the smells, depending on what time of year it is, are absolutely disgusting, horrible. Now with trash comes mice, cockroaches, and rats. Now, I don't want to scare you. Not every apartment in New York City is filled with cockroaches, rats, and mice. It's definitely not the case, but I do have to say that you will see them on the streets 100% if you live in New York City, all of them. So that's something that you need to be mentally prepared for. And even when you're mentally prepared for it when moving to the city, when you actually see it in person, you're still going to be just as disturbed. So I do want you to be prepared. Now, most apartments in New York City are going to be really, really good at exterminating, keeping them clean, and they're not going to have that issue, but you will see it from time to time. And as a real estate agent, I do see it from time to time when I'm doing showings. Everyone knows that New York City is not the best place to have a car. And I don't recommend having a car when you come to New York City unless you really, really need one. Now, I have to admit, I do have a car in New York City, but most of the time, I wish I didn't because it is way, way too complicated. Between the street parking or paying for a garage that is extremely overpriced. Paying for a garage here is literally the price of people's rent in other places around the world, but that's just your car rent here in New York City. I don't recommend having a car here if you don't need one. And I did live here for a while without one, but at the same time, you have to rely on public transportation, cabs, Ubers, Lyfts, or walking everywhere in New York City. And sometimes that's great because you don't have to worry about having a car, but other times it's just so inconvenient that you just wish that you can just get in your car and go somewhere. Even as someone who has a car here, if I'm going to the grocery store and want to take my car to the grocery store in Manhattan, I'm not going to do that because where am I going to park my car? I'm most likely going to have to park it way out of the way from the grocery store. Then is it even worth bringing my groceries back to the car? Like, it kind of defeats the whole purpose of the actual trip with the car. So these are just things that people don't think about until they get here and they're like, wow, this is actually very, very inconvenient. The laundry situation in New York City is an absolute joke. There's a couple different scenarios that people have to deal with. Either they don't have laundry in their unit or in the building at all, so they have to go to a laundromat, which is horrible. I've been there, done that. Or they have laundry in the building. They just have to lug their laundry either downstairs to the basement or to their floor if they're lucky enough to have it on their floor and just lug it down the hallway. Or third, they have laundry in unit. Laundry in unit is very, very rare here. Most people do not have laundry in their unit. And in fact, there are buildings that just don't even allow laundry in the unit. So they have to go outside to get their laundry done. Now, you can always send your laundry out to a wash and fold company. These are very, very common here. And I've been doing this for quite some time. I do have to admit though, it's very, very, very expensive. And it's also a little frustrating when you send your clothes out and you're probably not gonna get your clothes back the same day because it's impossible for them to do that. It's not like when you're doing a load of laundry and you need something instantly, you're not gonna get that back for a little bit of time. So they're all things to think about when you're dealing with the laundry situation here. Now, as a real estate agent, I also always tell people in New York City that you made it when you have a washer and dryer in your unit because it's so rare. Now, New York City is probably one of the busiest cities in the world. There are over 8 million people that live here in New York City. So it's kind of crazy when you compare that population to other cities around the world or even other states around the world, how big New York City is. But at the same time, even though it's so big, sometimes it can feel like the loneliest place in the world. If you live alone or even if you're just living far away from your friends and family, it can feel really, really lonely. So I always advise people to try to put themselves out there and make new friends and meet new people as fast as they can because it's just going to make your experience that much better. I do see people from time to time just move out of New York City because they're never really found their place and they're kind of lonely and they just want to go home. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I definitely want to help people avoid that if I can. So these are just going to be some of the reasons not to move to New York City. Now, if you guys know me, you know how much I love New York City. I love living here. I wouldn't trade it for anything. But at the same time, there are also a lot of times where I'm just like, wow, it's crazy that I still think New York City is worth it after going through all this. But I strangely do. Now, I would love to know from you guys, do you think that New York City is worth it? As always, I just love hearing from you guys.